This is KTVO's Good Morning Heartland.
And welcome back. As the weather gets nicer and people get out and start fishing more, the Missouri Department of Conservation usually starts receiving calls this time of year about plant life and ponds and lakes. And to break it all down for us, we have Craig Williamson here this morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
So let's talk about plant vegetation around ponds.
One of the things we want people to know about aquatic vegetation in ponds is that they are actually very important in ponds and lakes in Missouri. They provide food cover and shelter for not only aquatic organisms, but also for wildlife. The plant life essentially is the base of the food chain for any aquatic ecosystem. Aquatic plants can help stabilize the pond bank or the shore around your lake. They can stabilize the bottom of your pond, which can help keep the water clear in your pond or your lake. They can also absorb a lot of nutrients to help you to help prevent problems with excess nutrients in your pond or your lake. Also, and probably the most important thing is they are the primary way that dissolved oxygen is infused into your pond. And of course, all aquatic organisms, or at least all the fish in your pond, need that dissolved oxygen to breathe with.
So what kind of aquatic vegetation are we talking about that we should be expected or should have in or near our ponds?
There's a long list of good types of plants, and you can find a list of these types of plants on our website. There's some plants that we don't want that can become nuisance plants because they can spread too rapidly. There's some invasive species that can spread very rapidly and essentially take over your pond that you don't want. But to find a list of those that are good, like I say, you can just get on our website. It's a long list.
Right, and so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and post all of that on our website at heartlandconnection.com. In the meantime, so how much should a pond be covered with when it comes to aquatic vegetation?
In an ideal situation, you'd like probably around 10 to 20% of your pond to have vegetation in it. If you have too much, that can cause problems, and if you have too little, you might not have any fish or the aquatic organisms that you would want in your pond. It would be like, you don't want it to look like a swimming pool, and you don't want it to look like a swamp, essentially.
Right. So what are some of the problems that are associated with too much vegetation?
Sure. First of all, it doesn't look very good when you have too much vegetation in your pond or your lake. Second, it makes it really hard to go fishing or to access that pond or your lake. But the biggest problem associated with it is it can lead to problems with our dissolved oxygen. We can lose too much dissolved oxygen if we have too much vegetation, which can potentially kill the fish in the pond. If you have too much vegetation and that vegetation starts to die, bacteria can start to consume that dying vegetation, and that bacteria will consume oxygen, and it can suck all the oxygen out of your pond or your lake and lead to problems, like I said, such as fish kills, especially in the heat of the summer or in the dead of the winter.
All right, and so what are some steps that you recommend for our viewers out there that have their own ponds to treat these problems if they do have any?
Sure. The first step you want to do is to make sure you properly identify what type of vegetation you're dealing with. Ideally, we like to take a kind of a holistic approach and look at the entire watershed and see what's going on in that watershed around that pond or the lake to see if there's specifically any point where a lot of excessive nutrients are coming into that pond or the lake. You know, sometimes people might fertilize their lawn right next to their pond.
Right.
And so as soon as it rains, a lot of those nutrients will go right into that pond and cause you to have an excess of aquatic vegetation from all the excess nutrients going into it. But again, one of the first things you want to do is identify what species it is, and then we can treat the aquatic vegetation through biological, chemical, and mechanical means. So there's several different steps you can take just by simply buffering the pond or the lake with a lot of aquatic vegetation where the water's coming into the pond. You can deepen the sides of it. You can use herbicide to treat it. But again, the most important thing is to figure out exactly what vegetation you're dealing with.
All right, so if viewers have any questions or anything like that, who is the best person, obviously we know the Missouri Department of Conservation, to contact, but how do they go about doing that?
They can call the Northeast Regional Office here in Kirksville at 660-785-2420, or they can get on our website and look up who's my local contact. The best people to contact would either be your local private land conservationist, which is what I am, or a local fisheries management biologist, and they'd be glad to help you out with any issues you might be having with the vegetation. again, the identification of those plants is very important. So if we have time, we might be able to come out and look at your pond with you and give you some ideas on what steps you can take. If we don't have time, we might just have you take a Ziploc bag and put some of those plants in the Ziploc or a mason jar and bring those in for us to identify.
All
and
right.
then we can help you out.
And what we'll also do is, I know that you provided different outlooks and different websites and what's the word I'm trying to, references. That's the word I'm trying to use. References that we'll post and link on our website, so that way they can, you know, like you said, identify what type of vegetation it is, what they can do before they call you, to kind of make that whole process much easier. And like I said, we'll post that information on our website. Thank you so much, Craig, for coming in. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
All right, and we'll be right back.